She accidentally sent the CEO her resolutions. Then he walked to her desk and whispered, "You forgot me." She never meant to send it. Early in January, still fragile from the year before, she wrote her New Year's resolutions, quiet promises about healing, boundaries, and starting over. One careless click sends everything to the last person who should ever read it. The CEO of her company. Panic, silence, regret. She expects an email, a warning, maybe embarrassment. Instead, he says nothing. Minutes later, he walks across the office, stops beside her desk, leans closer, and whispers, "You forgot me." In that single moment, what began as an innocent mistake turns into something dangerous, where power meets vulnerability, and unspoken feelings refuse to stay hidden. Because some messages aren't sent by accident, and some resolutions change the moment the wrong person, or the right one, reads them first. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. You don't send private thoughts on company servers, Ms. Carter. The words cracked across the glass-walled conference room, sharp enough to make heads turn. Naomi Carter felt them land before she understood what they meant. 30 faces angled toward her, curiosity lifting like a breeze through dry leaves. Someone near the window stopped stirring their coffee. A chair scraped. The silence that followed was louder than the accusation. Naomi stood at the far end of the table, a printed agenda trembling between her fingers. She hadn't been speaking. She hadn't even been late. She had come early, as she always did, to help set out the pastries that no one officially noticed but everyone quietly ate. Her heart thudded once, hard. "I'm sorry," she said, and the apology escaped before she decided whether it belonged there. Across the table, Martin Green from compliance cleared his throat, eyes flicking to the tablet in front of him. "There was an internal email this morning," he said, trying for neutrality and missing it by inches. "Sent to the wrong recipient." Naomi's stomach dropped. She already knew. She had known the second her screen flashed message sent at 7:42 a.m., when her fingers were still wrapped around her grandmother's old blue ceramic mug. Steam curling up like a warning she ignored. Her resolutions, not the tidy, professional kind. The quiet midnight promises she'd written to herself, still tender from December's losses. Boundaries, healing. No more apologizing for taking up space, and one final line she hadn't meant to type but couldn't bring herself to delete. "Stop pretending you don't notice him," she swallowed. "It wasn't—" her voice wavered. She steadied it with both hands on the table. It wasn't meant for anyone. A few people shifted, sympathy softening their expressions. Others leaned in, scenting blood. Naomi felt the old familiar heat creep up her neck. The one that came when she was being looked at but not seen. At the head of the table, the empty chair waited. Sebastian Cole hadn't arrived yet. Martin tapped his tablet. "We'll address proper protocol later," he said too quickly, as if eager to move on. "For now?" The glass door opened. The room seemed to recalibrate around him. Not with noise or force, but with attention. Sebastian Cole stepped in, coat over one arm, graphite suit immaculate, eyes scanning the room with calm precision. He took in the half-eaten croissants, the frozen postures, Naomi standing when no one else was. His gaze paused on her, just a fraction longer than politeness required. "Sorry," he said mildly, setting his coat down. "Traffic." No one believed him. He was never late. Naomi sat slowly, pulse roaring in her ears. She didn't look at him again. She couldn't. The memory of the sent email burned behind her eyes. Every line now a liability, every honest word a possible weapon. The meeting resumed, awkward but moving. Charts appeared. Numbers marched across screens. Naomi took notes she didn't need, her handwriting careful and small. When someone passed the pastry box down the table, she shook her head. then reconsidered and took one anyway. The blueberry muffin was still warm. She broke it in half, the steam fogging her glasses for a second. She took a bite and didn't rush the next one. Halfway through, a small mercy arrived in the form of Janet from marketing, who leaned over and whispered, "If it helps, I once sent a love poem to my dentist," Naomi huffed, despite herself. Despite. A sound halfway to a laugh. Janet winked. The tension loosened a notch. A micro-victory. She clung to it. Sebastian spoke near the end, voice low, measured. He didn't mention emails. He didn't look at Naomi. He outlined next quarter's goals with the same restraint he applied to everything, including himself. When the meeting adjourned, chairs scraped back and conversation resumed in cautious bursts. Compliance handled procedure, the board handled power, legal handled truth, and none of them cared about how it felt to be the person standing in the middle. Naomi gathered her things quickly. If she moved fast enough, she could disappear into her cubicle before anyone decided to be kind or cruel. Both felt dangerous right now. She didn't make it. Naomi! It was her name, spoken simply, from behind her. She turned before she could stop herself. Yes? She hated how small it sounded. Sebastian stood a few steps away, hands relaxed at his sides. Up close, she noticed the faint shadow of stubble, the crease at the corner of his eye that suggested he smiled more than his reputation allowed. His expression now was unreadable. "Walk with me," he said, not a command, not a request. They moved through the open office, past desks that pretended not to watch. Naomi's shoes felt too loud on the floor. Her grandmother's mug sat on her desk, blue glaze chipped at the rim, the word "steady" painted inside. She'd inherited it, along with a lifetime of quiet resilience. She grabbed it without thinking, fingers wrapping around the familiar curve. They stopped beside her desk. For a moment, Sebastian said nothing. He glanced at the mug, then at her screen, where her inbox sat, ominously calm. No reply, no forwarded chain, just silence. "I didn't forward it," he said finally. Relief rushed through her so fast, it made her dizzy. "Thank you." He nodded once. "You should know, though, silence isn't indifference." Her breath caught. She looked up, meeting his eyes at last. Blue-gray, steady, not unkind. "I'm sorry," she began, defaulting again, the old habit tugging at her tongue. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The office noise faded, as if the space itself leaned away to give them privacy. She could smell his cologne, clean and understated. He tilted his head, just enough. "You forgot me," he whispered. The words landed between them, dangerous and deliberate, and Naomi realized this mistake wasn't finished with her yet. Naomi didn't remember sitting down, only that she suddenly was. Her chair accepted her weight with a soft sigh, like it understood the day she was having. She wrapped her fingers around the cup, warmth seeping into her palms, the word "steady" hidden inside where only she knew to look. Sebastian had already moved away. He hadn't waited for a response. No lingering look. No explanation. Just that quiet sentence, delivered like a truth he'd decided not to soften. And then he was gone, back toward his corner office, leaving a wake of questions behind him. Around her, the office resumed its careful breathing. Keyboards tapped. Phones rang. Someone laughed too loudly near the printer. Naomi stared at her inbox, half expecting it to explode with replies, clarifications, consequences. Nothing happened. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Her phone buzzed once. A calendar reminder, lunch, don't skip again. Her sister's doing. Naomi almost smiled. Almost. By noon, the silence had grown heavier than any reprimand. She stood, smoothing her cardigan, and headed for the break room. The hallway felt longer than usual, lined with glass walls that reflected her back at herself. Hazel eyes tired but clear, hair pulled into a low tie she didn't remember doing. She looked like someone trying very hard to be invisible. The break room offered the familiar comforts of hum. The low whir of the fridge, the faint smell of burnt coffee, the clatter of a spoon against ceramic. Naomi poured herself a cup, adding milk she didn't really want, just to have something to do. She balanced her sandwich on a paper plate. Simple turkey and lettuce. No drama, food as anchor. "Careful," a voice said. "That coffee bites." She turned to see Harold from IT, smiling over his own mug. He wore socks with tiny penguins on them, a detail that never failed to surprise her. "I'll risk it," she said. He leaned against the counter. "Rough morning?" She considered lying. "Educational," he chuckled. "I once replied all to a resignation letter I hadn't meant to send yet. My boss framed it." "That did it." Naomi laughed, soft but real, the sound easing something tight in her chest, a small kindness, a breather. They ate in companionable quiet for a few minutes. Naomi took measured bites, grounding herself in the ordinary. When she finished, she rinsed her mug carefully, as if the ritual mattered more today. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed again. "Sebastian Cole, can we talk?" 2:01 p.m., my office. Her stomach flipped, no punctuation, no emojis, just the weight of his name on her screen. At 1:58, she stood outside his office, clutching a notepad she didn't need. Through the glass, she saw him finish a call, his posture relaxed but alert. He looked up and met her eyes, then gestured her in. "Thank you for coming," he said. Once the door closed, she nodded. I didn't have much choice. A corner of his mouth lifted. "You always have a choice." She sat, smoothing her trousers. The office was spare but warm, wood desk, a single frame photo turned face down, a small espresso machine humming quietly on a side table. "Coffee?" he asked. She hesitated. "Yes, please." He prepared it himself, movements unhurried. The simple act felt intimate in a way that surprised her. When he handed her the cup, their fingers brushed. She felt it all the way to her shoulder. Micro-victory. She didn't pull away. "I want to be clear," he said, sitting across from her. "I won't comment on anything that isn't work-related unless you invite it." Relief and disappointment tangled inside her. "Thank you." He studied her for a moment. "Your email wasn't unprofessional. It was honest." She flinched. "Honesty isn't always welcome." "No," he agreed. "But it's not punishable." She took a sip. The coffee was strong, good. "Then why say anything at all?" He leaned back, folding his hands. "Because silence can be misread, and because I didn't want you spending the day imagining worst-case scenarios." Her shoulders eased. "You succeeded." A pause settled between them, not awkward, just full. "There's one more thing," he said. Her pulse quickened. "Yes?" "The board is sensitive right now," he continued. "Anything that looks like favoritism, or worse, could become noise." She understood. The power imbalance. The risk. "I don't want that." "Neither do I." Another pause. Outside, someone dropped a stack of papers. Life went on. "I'll be transparent," he said. "If this ever becomes more than it is now, it won't be secret or rushed." Her breath caught. He hadn't said if. He'd said ever. Before she could respond, his phone chimed. He glanced at it, jaw tightening just slightly. "Excuse me." He stood, turning away to answer. Naomi rose as well, not wanting to overstay. She reached for her notepad and froze. On his desk, half covered by a folder, lay a familiar blue curve, her mug. He followed her gaze and turned back, surprise flickering across his face. "You dropped it earlier," he said. "I meant to return it." She stared at the word inside, visible now. Steady. He read it too. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then a voice crackled over the intercom. "Sebastian, the board needs you, now." He looked at Naomi, something unresolved in his eyes. "We'll finish this," he said quietly. As she stepped into the hallway, whispers followed her, soft, curious. Someone had seen them together, and somewhere between the break room and her desk, Naomi realized the email wasn't the only thing she'd sent into the world. By the next morning, the office had decided what Naomi's meeting with Sebastian meant. No one said it outright. They never did. Meaning traveled faster in lowered voices, in the way conversations paused when she passed, in the sudden interest people took in their screens. Naomi felt it like a change in weather, subtle, unmistakable. She arrived early again, as she always had. The building smelled of fresh carpet cleaner and winter air. She set her bag down and reached automatically for the blue mug. It wasn't there. For a heartbeat, panic flared. Then she remembered. Sebastian's desk. The word steady sitting out in the open. A quiet truth too personal for glass walls and corporate eyes. She exhaled slowly and made coffee in a paper cup instead. It tasted wrong, thin, temporary. At 10, Janet appeared at her desk with a conspiratorial tilt to her head. "Walk with me," she said. Mimicking a familiar tone, Naomi shot her a look. Janet grinned. "Too soon?" They headed toward the elevators, but Janet veered them into the small cafe across the street instead. It was barely more than a counter and a row of mismatched chairs, but it served decent soup and didn't belong to anyone in the building. They ordered grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind that arrived steaming and forgiving. Naomi dipped her sandwich, watching the cheese stretch and snap. "So," Janet said lightly, "you and the king." Naomi winced. "Please don't call him that." "Fine, the Duke, the Viscount." "I sat in his office for 10 minutes, Naomi said. "We talked about protocol and mugs." Naomi's spoon paused. "How do you know about the mug?" Janet shrugged. "Glass walls. Also, Harold has binocular vision." Naomi laughed despite herself, a small release. "It's my grandmother's." "That explains it," Janet said. "It looks like it has opinions." They ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Naomi felt the warmth spread through her, the simple act of sharing a meal easing the edge of the day. "Listen," Janet said softer now. "People will talk. They always do. Just don't disappear." Naomi nodded. Disappearing had always been her instinct. Today she stayed. When she returned to her desk, an email waited for her. From Board Liaison, subject clarification. Her pulse thudded as she opened it. The message was brief, polite, and chillingly vague, a request for a statement regarding any potential conflicts of interest. She stared at the screen until the words blurred. At noon, Sebastian sent a calendar invite. Lunch, off-site. She hesitated, then accepted. They met at a small bistro 2 blocks away, the kind of place that served bread in baskets and didn't ask too many questions. Sebastian arrived first, already seated, jacket draped over the chair beside him. He stood when he saw her, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed. "I thought it might be better not to eat in the building," he said once they'd ordered. "Less commentary." "Thank you." They shared a quiet smile. The bread arrived warm, and he broke a piece in half, offering it to her. "I heard from the board," he said gently. "So did I. They're reacting to perception, not reality," he said. "Still, we should be careful." She met his gaze. "Careful how?" "Transparent, documented, slow." She nodded. "I can do slow." A flicker of humor crossed his face. "I suspected you could." They ate, talking about neutral things, books, travel, the best soup in the city. It felt almost normal, until Sebastian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then frowned. "What is it?" she asked. "An article," he said. "Internal blog. Anonymous." Her stomach sank. "About us?" He slid the phone across the table. The headline was subtle, almost elegant. "When proximity becomes power. A question of ethics." It didn't name names, it didn't have to. The comments were already filling in the blanks. Naomi pushed the phone back, hands steady despite the rush in her ears. "I don't want this. I know. I don't want to be a lesson," she said, "or a rumor." He reached for his water, then stopped himself. "Neither do I." Back at the office, the atmosphere had shifted again. Thicker, more watchful. Naomi worked through the afternoon, answering emails with careful precision. At 3, Harold stopped by with a chocolate bar and set it on her desk without a word. She smiled at him. He nodded, penguin socks flashing. At 5, as she packed up, a final email arrived from Sebastian Cole. Subject statement: I'll address the board tomorrow, publicly. Her heart raced. Public meant exposure, risk. It also meant dignity. She replied with one word: thank you. As she stood to leave, she noticed her blue mug waiting on her desk. Clean, filled, steam rising. Attached was a note in neat handwriting. For what it's worth, you didn't forget me. You reminded me. She looked up, scanning the office. Sebastian's door was closed, and outside, the hum of gossip grew louder. The boardroom smelled faintly of lemon polish and old decisions. Naomi sat at the long table with her hands folded in her lap, the blue mug resting in front of her like a small shield. She hadn't meant to bring it, but when the morning arrived heavy and unkind, she'd reached for what steadied her. The word inside faced her now, a quiet instruction she kept rereading. Steady. Across the table, the board members arranged their papers with ceremonial patience, 5 of them today. 3 women, 2 men. All experienced, all polite. All dangerous in the way calm authority often is. Sebastian stood near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled just enough to look human. He hadn't looked at Naomi yet. She didn't know if that was kindness or strategy. This meeting, began Eleanor Price, chairwoman, voice smooth as glass, is not disciplinary. Naomi had heard that sentence before in her life. It never meant what it said. Eleanor continued, it's about perception. And trust? Naomi lifted her chin. She refused to shrink. Sebastian finally turned. Then let's talk about facts, he said, not speculation. A murmur rippled around the table. Naomi felt it in her chest, a strange mix of gratitude and fear. Being defended publicly felt different than she'd imagined. Less triumphant, more exposed. Eleanor folded her hands. There was an email, she said, personal in nature, sent during work hours, to you. Yes, Sebastian replied, by mistake. And you responded? I did not, he said evenly. I chose discretion. Naomi's fingers tightened around the mug. Another board member, Richard Hale, leaned forward. And yet you met with her privately, off-site, twice. Naomi opened her mouth, then closed it. Sebastian spoke first. Always with transparency, he said, and always with professional boundaries. Eleanor's gaze shifted to Naomi. Ms. Carter, how do you feel about the attention this has brought? The room waited. Naomi placed her palms flat on the table. I feel, she said carefully, that I did my job. I made a mistake that hurt no one, and I'm being asked to carry a narrative I didn't create. Silence followed, not uncomfortable, evaluative. Eleanor studied her for a long moment. Thank you for your honesty. The meeting ended without fireworks. No verdict, no reassurance, just a promise to review internal communication guidelines. As they stood, Eleanor surprised Naomi by glancing at the mug. My mother had one just like that, she said softly. She said it reminded her not to rush grief. Naomi blinked. It was my grandmother's. Eleanor nodded once. Hold on to it. Outside the boardroom, the tension released all at once. Naomi let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Sebastian turned to her, concern flickering across his face. You did well, he said. So did you. He smiled faintly. Lunch? She laughed, the sound short but genuine. Short. I think I've earned soup. They went to a small diner this time, vinyl booths and laminated menus. The waitress called everyone Han and brought extra crackers without asking. Naomi ordered chicken noodle. Sebastian ordered the same. Living dangerously, she teased. He chuckled. I'm branching out. They talked about nothing important. A shared story about terrible office coffee, a debate over pie versus cake. When the soup arrived, Naomi took a spoonful before speaking. Halfway through, a child at the next booth leaned over and stared at Sebastian. "Are you famous?" the boy asked. Sebastian smiled politely. "No." The boy frowned. "You look like you should be." Naomi snorted before she could stop herself. Sebastian laughed, a real one, eyes crinkling. The mother apologized profusely. Naomi waved it off. "He's just observant." The moment stayed with her, light and grounding. Back at the office, the atmosphere had shifted yet again. Less whispering, more watching. Naomi worked through the afternoon, losing herself in spreadsheets and quiet competence. At 4:30, an email circulated company-wide. From Eleanor Price. Subject, transparency and trust. It was measured, reassuring. It affirmed boundaries and professionalism. It named no one. It also confirmed the story existed. Naomi closed her laptop and leaned back, exhaustion washing over her. She reached for the mug. Empty now. She smiled anyway. As she gathered her things, Martin from compliance appeared. "Walk you out?" he asked, too casually. Her instincts prickled. "Sure." In the elevator, he cleared his throat. "For what it's worth," he said, "not everyone thinks you're the problem." She met his eyes. "Thank you." Outside, the air was sharp with winter. Sebastian waited by the curb, coat on, hands in his pockets. "I thought I'd walk you," he said. They moved side by side, footsteps matching. For a block, neither spoke. "There's something I should tell you," he said finally. Her heart skipped. "Okay." "There's someone on the board," he continued, "who doesn't want this resolved quietly." She stopped. "Who?" He hesitated. "Someone who benefits from uncertainty." Before he could say more, "Good." His phone rang. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. "It's Eleanor," he said. Naomi watched his face change as he answered. "Yes," he said. "I understand." He hung up and looked at her, eyes unreadable. "They're calling an emergency session," he said. "Tonight." Her stomach dropped. "About what?" He hesitated. Then spoke softly. "About whether one of us should leave." Naomi didn't sleep much that night. She lay awake listening to the quiet creaks of her apartment, the distant hum of traffic, the way the refrigerator clicked on and off like it was keeping time with her thoughts. The blue mug sat on her bedside table. Empty, its presence oddly comforting. She turned it slowly, tracing the small chip at the rim with her thumb. Steady. She whispered the word once, just to hear it out loud. By morning, she'd made a decision, or at least she'd made peace with not knowing which decision she would make. At the office, the tension had sharpened. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It lived in the way people smiled too carefully, the way emails arrived with unnecessary politeness. Naomi worked through it, answering questions, finishing reports, doing the job she'd always done, quietly, thoroughly. At 10:30, Janet appeared again, this time holding 2 takeaway cups. "Hazelnut," she said, offering one. "Emergency provisions." Naomi accepted it gratefully. "You're a good person." Janet leaned against the desk. "Rumor says someone's head might roll tonight." Naomi took a sip. "Rumors have been busy." Janet lowered her voice. "If it's yours, I'll help you pack." The kindness hit harder than any threat. Naomi smiled, eyes stinging. "Thank you." At noon, Sebastian texted, "Lunch? Same diner." She hesitated, then replied, "Yes." The diner felt different today, more intimate, more fragile. They slid into the same booth as before, a small continuity that mattered more than it should have. Sebastian ordered for both of them without asking. Chicken noodle again, pie to share. "Is that allowed?" she teased weakly. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm taking liberties." They ate slowly. Naomi watched the steam rise from her bowl, grounding herself in the ordinary. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop. Life, still happening. "I've been thinking," she said finally. "So have I," he replied. She met his gaze. "If someone has to leave, it should be me." His spoon stilled. "No." She held up a hand. "Hear me out." He leaned back, jaw tight. She'd never seen him look so openly unsettled. "I don't want you paying for a system that can't tell the difference between carelessness and character," she said. "You've built something here. I'm newer." "That doesn't make you expendable," she smiled softly. "It makes me freer." He looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head. "You're assuming I'd let that happen quietly." A small laugh escaped her. "You're assuming I'd want you to fight for me that way." The waitress appeared, setting down the pie. "On the house," she said. "You two look like you need it." Naomi thanked her, touched by the small mercy. They shared the pie in silence, the sweetness cutting through the heaviness for a moment. After lunch, Sebastian walked her back, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. "There's something else," he said as they reached the building. "The board member I mentioned." "Yes?" "It's Richard," he said. "He's angling for my position. This situation gives him leverage." Naomi absorbed that. "So I'm useful." Sebastian stopped walking. "You're not a pawn." She reached into her bag and pulled out the mug, holding it between them. "This reminds me that some things survive being chipped," she said. "Even being passed around." He looked at it, then at her. "And some things are worth protecting." Inside, the office buzzed with restrained energy. At 3, Naomi received a meeting invite for 7 p.m. emergency session. Attendance required. At 4:30, Harold stopped by again, this time with a paper bag. "Leftover cookies from my wife's bake sale," he said. "They're aggressively oatmeal." Naomi laughed, a real one. "I love oatmeal." He smiled, satisfied. "Good luck tonight." As evening settled in, the building emptied. Lights dimmed. Naomi waited in the small conference room, hands folded around the mug, now filled with tea. Sebastian joined her a few minutes later. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "I don't regret yesterday. Or today." She met his eyes. "Neither do I." The board filed in, faces solemn. Eleanor nodded to Naomi, then to Sebastian. Richard Hale sat back, fingers steepled, a faint smile playing at his lips. Eleanor cleared her throat. "We've reached a decision." Naomi's heart pounded. "This is not about punishment," Eleanor continued. "It's about optics, responsibility, and leadership." Richard leaned forward. "Someone must demonstrate accountability." Sebastian straightened. Naomi inhaled. Eleanor looked between them. "We believe," she said slowly, "that one of you stepping aside would restore confidence." The room held its breath. "Ms. Carter," Eleanor said, turning to Naomi, "would you be willing to accept a transfer?" Naomi felt the weight of every eye on her. She glanced at Sebastian, then down at the mug. "Steady." She opened her mouth to answer, and Richard's phone buzzed loudly on the table. He frowned, checked the screen, and went pale. Eleanor noticed. "Is there a problem, Richard?" He swallowed. "There's been a development?" All eyes turned to him. Naomi's pulse raced. "What kind of development?" Eleanor asked. Richard hesitated. "Something," he said slowly. "That changes everything." The silence in the boardroom stretched thin, like glass about to crack. Naomi watched Richard Hale's face with a strange calm. His earlier confidence had drained away, leaving something tighter underneath. Fear, maybe, or irritation at being interrupted at the worst possible moment. Eleanor's voice cut cleanly through the tension. "Richard," she said, "if there's information relevant to this decision, now would be the time." Richard cleared his throat. "I've just received notice," he said, choosing his words with care, "that an internal document has been submitted to legal." Sebastian's eyes narrowed. "What document?" Richard hesitated. That hesitation told Naomi more than his words ever could. "A record," Richard said finally, "of email access logs." Naomi felt a small spark of confusion. "Access logs?" Sebastian's gaze sharpened. "You mean server activity?" "Yes," Richard replied. "It appears there were multiple instances of unauthorized access to private internal communications. Eleanor's fingers stilled on the table. "Whose communications?" Richard swallowed. "Ms. Carter's." The room shifted. Naomi's breath caught, not in panic, but in a sudden, quiet clarity. She hadn't imagined the feeling of being watched, of being discussed when she wasn't there. Sebastian leaned forward. "Are you saying someone accessed her email without authorization?" "That's what the preliminary report suggests," Richard said. "Too quickly?" "Of course, we don't yet know who—" "We do," Eleanor interrupted. All eyes turned to her. She picked up her tablet, scrolling once, then twice. "The submission came from our IT director," she said, along with a statement. "Harold." Naomi's heart lifted just slightly. Eleanor continued. "According to the report, the access came from a senior-level account, one with privileges beyond standard oversight." Richard's face drained of color. Sebastian spoke softly. "Yours?" Richard laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "This is absurd." "Is it?" Eleanor asked. "Because the timestamps align precisely with the appearance of that anonymous article." Naomi felt the pieces click together. The blog post, the timing, the way rumors had spread with such precision. Eleanor turned to Naomi. "Ms. Carter, were you aware your email had been accessed beyond its original recipient?" Naomi shook her head. "No." Sebastian's voice hardened. "I was the only intended recipient. I did not share it." The truth settled into the room. Heavy and undeniable. Richard pushed back his chair. "This is a misunderstanding." Eleanor's expression remained calm. "We'll let legal decide that." The meeting adjourned abruptly, not with resolution, but with momentum, an unmistakable shift of power. Naomi stood slowly, legs trembling, now that the danger had shape. Sebastian turned to her. "Are you all right?" She nodded. "I think so." Outside the boardroom, Eleanor paused beside Naomi. "You handled yourself with dignity," she said. "No matter what comes next, remember that." Naomi thanked her, voice steady despite the swirl inside. The office was nearly empty by the time Naomi gathered her things. She found the blue mug on her desk, filled with fresh tea. Someone had added honey. She smiled, a small victory warming her chest. At the elevators, Sebastian caught up with her. "Dinner?" he asked. "Nothing formal, just food." She considered, then nodded. "I'd like that." They went to a quiet place nearby. All soft lighting and wooden tables. They ordered simple dishes, pasta, salad, bread to share. Naomi felt the tension ease with each bite, the act of eating together grounding her again. "I should apologize," Sebastian said suddenly. She looked up. "For what?" "For not realizing sooner," he said. "For letting this touch you at all." She shook her head. "You didn't do this." "No," he agreed, "but I care that it happened." The word lingered between them. Care. She reached for her water, fingers brushing his. This time, neither pulled away. They talked until the plates were cleared, about small things and future ones. About how trust is built quietly and how easily it can be tested. When they stepped outside, the night air was crisp. Sebastian hesitated, then spoke. "Naomi," he said, "when this is resolved, I'd like to see where this goes. Openly. Properly." Her heart fluttered, hope and caution entwined. "One step at a time," she said. He smiled. "Slow," he agreed. As she walked home, her phone buzzed. From legal department subject, follow-up required. Naomi stopped under a streetlight, the glow catching the blue mug in her bag. The truth had surfaced, but it wasn't finished with them yet. The legal department occupied the quietest floor in the building, where the carpet swallowed sound and conversations seemed to lower themselves automatically. Naomi noticed this as she stepped out of the elevator the next morning, blue mug in hand like a talisman she wasn't ready to give up. She hadn't slept much again, but the exhaustion felt different now, less panicked, more alert, as if her body understood that something important was unfolding and wanted to stay awake for it. "Ms. Carter?" A woman in her 40s, crisp blazer, kind eyes stepped forward. "I'm Linda Morales. Thank you for coming in." They settled into a small conference room, water, tissues, a bowl of mints that looked untouched. Linda spoke calmly, guiding Naomi through the timeline. Naomi answered simply, honestly. She didn't embellish, she didn't minimize. "When did you first feel something was off?" Linda asked. Naomi thought for a moment. "When people started knowing things I hadn't said out loud." Linda nodded, making a note. "That's usually how it begins." The meeting lasted an hour. When Naomi left, the world felt oddly sharper, like colors had been turned up just a notch. She returned to her desk to find Janet waiting with 2 paper plates and a conspiratorial smile. "Leftover quiche from my book club," Janet said. "Spinach, possibly heroic amounts of cheese." Naomi laughed. "You're saving my life one meal at a time." They ate together at Naomi's desk, crumbs and quiet camaraderie. Another small victory, another breath. At noon, Sebastian appeared beside her cubicle, holding 2 coffees. "Walk?" he asked. They took their cups to the small park across the street. Winter had stripped the trees bare, but sunlight still found its way through the branches. They sat on a bench, steam curling from their lids. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than I expected," she said. "They listened." "They should," he replied. She glanced at him. "You sound confident." "I'm patient," he said. "There's a difference." She smiled, sipping her coffee. "You're learning," he chuckled, "from a good teacher." The moment felt easy, almost peaceful. That's when her phone buzzed. "Unknown number. You think this ends well for you?" Her stomach tightened. She didn't reply. Sebastian noticed her expression. "What is it?" She showed him the screen, his jaw set, but his voice stayed calm. "Save it," he said. "Forward it to legal." "I don't want more trouble." "This isn't trouble," he said gently. "It's clarity." Back in the office, the hum had shifted again. Less gossip, more caution. Richard Hale's office door remained closed all afternoon. At 3, an all-staff email arrived from Eleanor Price, subject, temporary leave. Richard Hale was taking immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Naomi exhaled slowly, a release she hadn't realized she was holding. At 4, Harold appeared with his trademark paper bag. "Victory cookies," he announced. "Still oatmeal, still aggressive." Naomi accepted one, smiling. "You're consistent." He beamed. As evening approached, Sebastian stopped by again. "Dinner?" he asked. "My turn to cook." She raised an eyebrow. "That's brave." "I have pasta," he said, "and humility." They cooked together in his apartment. A simple affair: garlic, olive oil, tomatoes. Naomi chopped while Sebastian stirred, their movements finding an easy rhythm. He plated carefully, as if presentation mattered. They ate at his small table, candles flickering. No rush, no agenda. "This feels," she said, searching for the word, "safe." He nodded. "That matters to me." Afterward, he handed her something wrapped in a napkin. She unfolded it to find her blue mug. "I thought it should live with you," he said, "but I wanted you to know it was never just an object to me." She traced the rim, emotion swelling. "Thank you." They stood by the door when it was time to leave, neither quite ready to say goodnight. "There's something else," he said quietly. "When this is over, I'll make a statement. About us, about boundaries." Her heart fluttered. "Publicly?" "Yes," he said. "Only if you're comfortable." She met his gaze. "I am." As she stepped into the hallway, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email from Legal Department, subject, "Additional evidence located." Naomi stopped walking. Justice was moving, but it wasn't done yet. Naomi reread the subject line 3 times before opening the email. "Additional evidence located." The words sat there, neat and unemotional, like they didn't understand how much weight they carried. She lowered herself onto the edge of her bed, coat still on. blue mug resting in her lap. She hadn't even realized she'd brought it with her again. It had become instinct now, like carrying keys. She opened the message. The legal department's tone was calm. Procedural. They had uncovered archived access logs going back several months, not just to her inbox, to others, selectively, quietly, always tied to moments when internal politics shifted. At the bottom of the email was a single line that made her chest tighten. "You were not the first." Naomi closed her eyes. So many small moments suddenly rearranged themselves in her memory. Other women who'd left abruptly, men who'd been quietly sidelined, rumors that never quite added up. She hadn't been singled out because she was careless. She'd been convenient. Her phone rang. Sebastian. "I just saw it," he said when she answered. "Are you sitting down?" "Yes." "Good, because this is bigger than us." "I know," she said softly. They agreed to meet in the morning before work. After the call ended, Naomi sat for a long while, the room quiet around her. Then she stood, set the mug in the sink, and made herself something to eat. Not fancy. Toast. Soup from a can. She ate at the counter, slowly, honoring the day by not rushing through it. The next morning, the office felt different again, not tense, alert. People smiled more cautiously. Conversations stopped when executives passed, not out of fear, but awareness. Naomi walked in with her head up, blue mug in hand, and for the first time in days, no one looked away. Sebastian met her in a small conference room near his office. There was coffee waiting, pastries untouched. "Eat," he said gently. "You'll need the energy." She broke off a piece of a croissant, the flakes scattering onto the plate. "You sound like you know what's coming." "I do," he said. "Legal briefed me late last night." And Richard didn't act alone." Her hand stilled. "Who else?" Sebastian hesitated. "Someone external, a consulting firm he'd been feeding information to, insurance." Naomi leaned back, absorbing it. "So this was strategy." "Yes," he said, "and fear." She let out a breath. "That doesn't make it easier." "No," he agreed, "but it makes it clearer." At 11, an all-hands meeting was called, not optional. The auditorium filled quickly. Naomi sat near the aisle, Janet beside her, Harold a few rows back, waving when he caught her eye. Someone passed around bottled water. Someone else offered mints, small gestures, collective nerves. Eleanor Price stepped onto the stage. She didn't use slides. She didn't sit. She spoke plainly. She acknowledged the investigation, the findings, the breach of trust. She named Richard Hale. She named the consulting firm. She spoke about accountability, about the cost of ambition when it forgets people. Naomi listened, heart pounding, as Eleanor said, "We owe an apology to those who were harmed." Her gaze swept the room and landed on Naomi. "We failed you," Eleanor said, "and we are sorry." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was steady, respectful. It felt earned. Afterward, the room buzzed with quiet conversations. Janet squeezed Naomi's hand. "You did it," she whispered. Naomi shook her head. "We did." Sebastian found her near the exit. "Are you all right?" She nodded, surprised to find it was true. "I think I am." They walked out together into the crisp afternoon. "Lunch?" he asked. She smiled. "I thought you'd never ask." They went somewhere new this time, a small place with linen napkins and soup served in wide bowls. They ordered different things, finally branching out, and laughed about it. "You're expanding your horizons," she teased. "Careful," he said. "I might order dessert." They shared a quiet moment, the kind that didn't need filling. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it, expression shifting. "What is it?" she asked. "Eleanor," he said. "She wants us both in her office." "Now." Naomi's pulse quickened. "Us?" "Yes." They paid quickly and walked back, side by side. The office seemed to lean in as they passed, anticipation humming. Eleanor waited with a folder on her desk. She gestured for them to sit. "This isn't about discipline," she said immediately. "It's about the future." Naomi's hands tightened around her mug. "We're restructuring," Eleanor continued. "New oversight, new leadership roles." Sebastian glanced at Naomi, then back. "And?" Eleanor smiled slightly. "And I'd like to offer Ms. Carter a position." Naomi blinked. "A position?" "Yes," Eleanor said. "One that reflects both her skill and the trust she's earned." Sebastian's eyes searched Naomi's face. "What kind of position?" Naomi asked. Eleanor slid the folder across the desk. Naomi opened it. Her breath caught. This wasn't a transfer. It was a promotion. She looked up, stunned. Before she could speak, Eleanor added, "There is one condition." Naomi's heart sank. "What condition?" she asked. Eleanor folded her hands. "Transparency. About you and Sebastian." The room went very still. Naomi turned to him, questions crowding her eyes. Sebastian met her gaze, calm but intent. "This," Eleanor said, "changes everything. So before we proceed, I need to know," she paused, "are you willing to stand together?" "Publicly?" Naomi felt the weight of the moment settle over her. She looked down at the mug, at the word inside. "Steady." She looked back up and opened her mouth to answer. Naomi didn't answer right away. The room felt smaller than it had a moment ago, the air thicker with consequence. She became suddenly aware of the weight of the blue mug in her hands, the faint warmth still clinging to it. She turned it slowly, letting her thumb rest against the familiar chip. Steady. She looked at Sebastian. He wasn't rushing her. That alone felt like a promise. His expression held no expectation, only presence, quiet, grounded, ready to stand or step back depending on what she chose. Naomi drew a breath. "If we stand together," she said carefully, "it won't be a performance." Eleanor nodded. "That's exactly why I asked," Naomi continued, voice calm but firm. "No hiding, no spectacle, no story shaped for comfort." Sebastian spoke then, his tone even. "And no advantage taken. Professional lines stay clear, publicly stated, documented." Eleanor smiled just slightly. "You're already answering my concerns." Naomi felt something inside her settle. Not fear this time. Resolve. "Yes," she said, "I'm willing." The word echoed softly in the room. Sebastian exhaled, a breath he'd been holding longer than she realized. He didn't reach for her hand, not yet, but the space between them felt charged all the same. "Then we proceed," Eleanor said, "together." When they left the office, the hallway seemed brighter. Or maybe Naomi's eyes had simply adjusted to being seen. By mid-afternoon, the announcement was drafted. Dry, respectful, clear, no romance, just facts. Naomi reviewed it twice, then once more, heart steadying with each line. Janet appeared at her desk, just as Naomi hit save. "So," she said, eyebrows raised, "is it true?" Naomi smiled. "Which part?" "That you're being promoted and dating the man half the office pretends not to admire?" Naomi laughed. The sound free. "Yes and yes." Janet clasped her hands dramatically. "I knew it. I demand cake." "I think that's fair," Naomi said. At 5, Sebastian stopped by again. "Dinner?" he asked. "Somewhere celebratory," she considered. "Only if there's soup." He grinned. "I know a place." They went to a small neighborhood restaurant with checkered tablecloths and a chalkboard menu. The owner greeted Sebastian by name, which surprised Naomi. "You come here often?" she asked as they sat. "When I need reminding that titles don't matter," he said. They ordered minestrone and shared a loaf of bread still warm from the oven. Naomi tore off a piece, savoring the simple comfort. The day's weight began to lift, replaced by something lighter. Hope, maybe, or trust. Halfway through the meal, an older woman at the next table leaned over. "Excuse me," she said kindly. "I just wanted to say, you two look very happy." Naomi blinked, then smiled. "Thank you." The woman nodded. "It shows." When they left, Naomi's phone buzzed with the notifications. Messages, emails, some congratulatory, some cautious, a few sharp-edged enough to remind her the world wasn't suddenly gentle. One message stood out. Unknown number? Careful. People don't forgive women who rise. Sebastian saw her expression. Let me guess, he said. Someone uncomfortable with change. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. I'm not shrinking anymore. Good, he said. Neither am I. The next morning, the announcement went live. Naomi arrived early, heart steady, mug in hand. The office buzzed, not cruelly, not kindly, just alive with reaction. She took her seat, opened her laptop, and began working. At 10, Eleanor stopped by her desk. How are you holding up? Naomi smiled. Still standing. Eleanor nodded approvingly. That's leadership. At noon, there was cake. Chocolate, Janet insisted. Harold brought forks. Someone joked about needing a second announcement just for dessert policy. Laughter rippled through the break room. Easing nerves, Sebastian appeared at the doorway watching her laugh with her colleagues. When she caught his eye, something unspoken passed between them. Later that afternoon, as Naomi gathered her things to leave, she noticed an envelope on her desk. No return address. Inside was a single printed page. An email chain, old, carefully selected, messages that showed manipulation, pressure, intent. Richard's words, unmistakable. Proof that went beyond policy and into motive. At the bottom, a handwritten note, in case you need this. A friend. Naomi's pulse quickened. She looked around, but the office had already thinned out. She folded the papers carefully, sliding them into her bag beside the blue mug. Outside, Sebastian waited. Ready? He asked. She nodded, then hesitated. There's something you should see. They walked together into the fading light, the envelope heavy between them, because justice, she was learning, was sometimes needed one last push. Naomi waited until they were inside Sebastian's apartment before taking the papers from her bag. She set the blue mug on the kitchen counter first, as if making space for truth required ritual. Then she spread the pages across the table, smoothing them carefully, the way she might handle something fragile and alive. Sebastian read in silence, his jaw tightened with each line, not in anger alone, but in recognition. This fills the gap, he said finally. It explains the pattern. It was left on my desk, Naomi said. No name. Someone who needed to be heard without being seen, he said. I understand that more than I'd like to. They sat for a moment, the weight of it settling. If we submit this, Naomi said slowly, it ends him, completely. Sebastian met her gaze. And protects the people who come after you. She nodded. That mattered. They ordered takeout, simple noodles and dumplings, eaten straight from the containers at the table. Comfort food for a heavy decision. Naomi lifted a dumpling, steam curling, grounding herself in the small, ordinary pleasure of it. Food makes big choices easier, she said. Sebastian smiled faintly. Then we should eat more often. After dinner, Naomi stood and walked to the window. City lights blinked back at her, steady and indifferent. I don't want revenge, she said. I want closure. Justice can be gentle, Sebastian replied. It doesn't have to be loud. She turned back to him. Will you support me either way? Always, he said, without hesitation. That settled it. The next morning, Naomi forwarded the documents to legal. She didn't write much. She didn't need to. The evidence spoke cleanly for itself. The day unfolded with strange calm. Naomi worked. She drank her coffee. She answered emails. At noon, Janet brought in soup from home and insisted Naomi try it. It's lentil, Janet said. My grandmother's recipe. Naomi smiled, tasting it. It tastes like someone cared. Janet nodded. She did. At 3, the building seemed to inhale as one, then exhale. An all-staff email arrived. From Eleanor Price, subject, conclusion of investigation. Richard Hale's resignation was effective immediately. The consulting relationship was terminated. Formal apologies would be issued to those affected. New safeguards were being implemented. No spectacle, no triumph, just finality. Naomi sat back in her chair, hands resting on the desk. For the first time in weeks, her shoulders lowered completely. Sebastian appeared at her side. "It's done." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "It is." "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." They walked a few blocks to a quiet street Naomi hadn't noticed before. Sebastian stopped in front of a small building with warm light glowing through the windows. "My parents met here," he said. "It used to be a bookstore. Now it's something else." Inside was a small community space, tables, bookshelves, a modest kitchen. A sign near the door read, "Steady Hands Collective." Naomi's breath caught. "I've been funding it quietly," Sebastian said. "A place for people starting over. Mentorship, training, second chances." She touched the blue mug in her bag without thinking. "You named it," he smiled. "I thought you might recognize the word." They shared tea there, seated at a worn wooden table. Volunteers moved around them, laughing softly. A woman about Naomi's age was being shown how to log into a computer. Another person carried in a tray of sandwiches, a shared meal, a shared purpose. "This is beautiful," Naomi said. "So are you," he replied simply. She met his gaze, something sure and warm blooming in her chest. "Sebastian," she said, "I don't want this to be something we survive." He leaned closer. "Neither do I." He reached into his pocket and placed something small on the table, a key. "No pressure," he said quickly. "It's not a proposal, not yet. It's just an invitation to choose us, openly, every day." Naomi closed her fingers around the key, emotion swelling. "I choose us," she said. They stood together in the doorway as evening fell, the city humming beyond the glass. Naomi felt something rare settle inside her. Peace. Her phone buzzed one last time. From Eleanor Price. Subject, tomorrow. "There's one final thing I'd like to discuss." "Good news." Naomi smiled, leaning into Sebastian's shoulder. Some endings, she was learning, made room for beginnings. Morning arrived quietly, like it didn't want to interrupt anything. Naomi woke before her alarm, sunlight resting gently on the wall. For a moment, she didn't move. She listened to the city breathing below, the ordinary sounds that meant life was continuing. Cars? Footsteps, someone laughing far away. She reached to the bedside table and wrapped her fingers around the blue mug, now repurposed as a pencil holder. The word inside caught the light. "Steady," she smiled. At the office, the mood felt different from anything she'd known there before. Not tense, not watchful. Settled, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. Eleanor's office door was open when Naomi arrived. That alone felt symbolic. "Come in," Eleanor said, standing to greet her. "Coffee?" "Yes, please." Eleanor poured it herself, no assistance, no ceremony. They sat across from each other. Sunlight cutting clean lines across the desk. "I wanted you to hear this privately first," Eleanor said. "The board has approved the restructuring." Naomi nodded. "I read the summary." "This part wasn't in the summary," Eleanor added, sliding a document across the desk. "We're creating a new role. Director of Ethical Oversight and Culture." Naomi's breath caught. "That's significant." "It's overdue," Eleanor said, "and I want you in it." Naomi looked down at the paper, then back up. "You're asking me to help change how this place works." "I'm asking you," Eleanor replied, "to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen again." Naomi felt the weight of it and the rightness. "I accept." Eleanor smiled, something warm and almost proud softening her expression. "Good. One more thing." Naomi raised an eyebrow. "You'll be working closely with Sebastian," Eleanor said. "And I want to be very clear. Your relationship is acknowledged, documented, and supported. No shadows." Naomi let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you." Eleanor stood. "You earned this." both of you." At noon, Sebastian was waiting by the elevators, two takeaway containers in hand. "Celebratory lunch," he said. "Soup, obviously." "Obviously," Naomi laughed. They ate in the small park across the street, bundled in coats, steam rising from their cups. Naomi told him everything, the role, the trust, the chance to build something better. "I'm proud of you," Sebastian said simply. She studied him for a moment. "You know this changes things," he nodded. "Yes, it makes them honest." That evening they went back to the Steady Hands Collective. This time, it was busier. Someone had put up a small banner, "Community Dinner, all welcome." Long tables were set, nothing fancy, soup, bread, salad. People from all walks of life sat side by side, sharing food and stories. Naomi ladled soup for a woman who reminded her of her grandmother, hands worn but eyes bright. "You're new here," the woman said. "Yes," Naomi replied, "but I think I'll stay." Sebastian watched her from across the room, something unmistakably certain in his expression. After dinner, as people lingered and laughed, Sebastian gently took Naomi's hand. "Come with me," he said. They stepped into the small courtyard out back. String lights glowed softly overhead. The city noise faded to a hum. He took a breath, not rushed, not dramatic. "I won't pretend this is perfect," he said, "or simple. But I know this. Every time the world tested you, you chose dignity. And every time I imagined the future, you were in it." Naomi's eyes filled. But she didn't look away. "I don't need grand gestures," he continued. "I need truth, partnership, a life that's chosen on purpose." He reached into his pocket and took out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple ring, elegant, quietly beautiful. "Naomi Carter," he said, voice steady, "will you marry me?" She laughed through her tears, a sound full and free. "Yes," she said, with intention, with certainty, "yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, hands warm, sure. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, the future settling gently around them. Later, as they walked home together, Naomi leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. The blue mug clinked softly in her bag. Some mistakes, she realized, weren't accidents. They were invitations, and she had finally learned how to accept one. Months later, the mornings had learned their names. The smell of fresh coffee filled the kitchen before Naomi realized she was smiling. Morning light poured in through the open window, carrying the soft hum of the city waking up. Sebastian stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up, watching the kettle as if the moment deserved full attention. There was no rush in his movements, no tension. "You've noticed," Naomi said, leaning against the doorway, "that we're unusually calm," he smiled, that quiet, familiar curve of his mouth. "I think that's what happens when nothing has to be hidden anymore." Naomi crossed the room and reached for the blue mug. The small chip on the rim was still there. It always would be. But now it felt less like a wound and more like a signature, proof that something had been used. Carried, survived. She poured the coffee and sat across from him. "Are you ready?" he asked. She nodded. "I've never felt more ready for something that doesn't feel heavy." They ate a simple breakfast, toast, fruit, silence that felt companionable, not empty. When Sebastian stood to grab his jacket, Naomi noticed the absence of urgency. No nerves, no second-guessing, only intention. Outside, the day was clear and unassuming. The ceremony wasn't far. They walked most of the way, hands brushing, neither needing to say what both already knew. The wedding took place at the Steady Hands Collective. The space was filled with light, long wooden tables pushed aside to make room for a small circle of chairs. No decorations beyond flowers someone had picked that morning, no grand entrance. Just people who had witnessed the journey, Janet, Harold, Eleanor, a few volunteers from the collective. Naomi wore a simple dress, nothing elaborate, something that felt like herself. Sebastian wore a dark suit without a tie, just as he always had when he wanted to be fully present. When they stood facing each other, there was no dramatic pause. Sebastian spoke first. "I choose you," he said, his voice steady. "In ordinary days, in difficult ones, I choose you, without hiding, without rushing, without fear." Naomi felt tears gather, but she didn't look away. "I choose you," she replied, "because with you I don't have to be strong all the time. I can be whole." That was all. No applause, just quiet breathing. And then smiles, and then hands reaching for hands. Later, as people shared soup and bread around the long tables, Naomi noticed a young woman standing near the doorway, unsure whether she belonged. Naomi crossed the room without thinking. "Have you eaten?" she asked gently. The woman shook her head. "I didn't want to get in the way." Naomi handed her a bowl. "You're exactly where you're meant to be." Sebastian watched from across the room, his expression soft and certain. This, he thought, was what choosing someone looked like. That evening, back home, the apartment felt different, not new. Settled. Naomi unpacked the last of the small box she'd brought with her and paused before placing the blue mug on a high kitchen shelf. Beside it, already waiting, was another mug, the same shape, the same color. She set them side by side, not as armor, not as a reminder, just as part of a shared life. Later, as they stood together by the window, the city lights blinking quietly below, Naomi rested her head against Sebastian's shoulder. She realized then that nothing dramatic was beginning. Something steady was continuing. And for the first time, staying was more than enough. If you were Naomi, would you have trusted that one wrong click could lead to the right life? Tell me in the comments what part of this story stayed with you the most. If it touched your heart, like the video, subscribe for more emotionally rich stories, and rate this story from 0 to 10. Your support truly matters. Thank you for sharing this time with me. See you in the next story.